teachers are happy teachers, and happy teachers teach happy children. You want teachers, sorry, there's a really annoying fly here. You want teachers that are getting paid very close to the top of your state average, and really we'd like to skew that onto the national average. I think especially after the last year, we can all agree that teachers do not make what they are worth. And Zoe and I can attest to that as professional educators. There's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes that isn't seen. And so you're looking for teachers that are well paid, that are well educated, that have been at a school for 5 or more years. Obviously, you want to see new teachers too. That's where the new fun, fresh ideas come from. New training methods are always being rolled out. But in elementary school, just generally a good, solid school with a wide array of extracurriculars, good teachers. When we get into middle school, then we start looking more into the nitty gritty of what kids like. So this is what I'm looking at, particular extracurriculars. So if my child likes soccer, I'm not necessarily going to lean towards putting them in a school without a club soccer program or without like a school-based soccer program. That just doesn't make sense. If my kid is motivated by soccer, how am I going to get them through the end of the day without being like, well, at the end of the day in the fall or the spring, whenever soccer season is, you get to go play soccer with your buddies for an hour every day after school. Like, just like, let's power through this. Let's do this. Like drama, band, any sports activity, clubs, honor society. You're going to start really looking at those at the middle school level, because it doesn't make sense to send your child who's really interested in something to a school that doesn't have that something. Sure, you could get it in the community, but if you can get it at the school, go for the school. And then especially in the high school level, high school is the last step before adulthood. So you really want to hone in on what your child likes, their academic strengths and weaknesses, what they want to do after graduation, after senior year, and what their plans are. So, and I also want to emphasize that you do not have to go to college. Your child does not have to go to college. There are other valuable, amazing professions out there that are vocational. So electrician, plumber, these are all well-paid careers by highly educated people that didn't necessarily go to college. So it's okay. So just think about who your child is in high school. What are they leaning towards? Do they want to maybe go into the military service afterwards? Are they looking at a military college experience at one of the service academies? Are they looking at a vocational education? Are they looking at a traditional college education? Do they just want to go work for a while and try a bunch of different things out? There are lots of schools out there that will tailor them, that you will be able to tailor a program to who your child is. So just kind of keep your kid in mind, really. That's it.
That's awesome advice. No, it wasn't, because we have to cover, it's so different for elementary and middle and high school. And I know, like, I'm loving the fact that a lot of high schools are now bringing in vocational training and programs into the schools again, because I feel like that's such a great way to help kids figure out, maybe your kid's on the fence of whether they're wanting to do something like that. And I think that's a great way for them to figure that out. So when we're thinking about all these things and we're searching schools, or we're moving and we're looking at our neighborhood school online, a lot of times when we put that in our Google, a grade from the state comes up, along with a bunch of these other private sites that have ratings and metrics and reviews. So what advice do you have for parents like me when I'm looking for a school for my kid, and I see all of this stuff pop up, and maybe it's a little scary to me?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So step one, don't freak out. It's okay. I promise you it is going to be okay. So my child, my oldest, goes to a 3 out of 10 school rated by one of those big private websites. A 3. Now, this is what I do for a living. I look at schools and try to figure out if it's a good fit for different people's children. Never having taught that child in my life, just looking at their data and then what their parents' wants and needs are for them. Never in my wildest dreams did I think I would be sending my child to a 3 out of 10 school, but the school is incredible. It's bilingual. It is Spanish, English bilingual. It is diverse. It is inclusive. She has amazing teachers who are so attuned to her, even teaching her remotely. Like I would get emails from them of like, hey, I just need to let you know that she said this today on Zoom class. I know you were probably teaching your own students or on with a client, but I need to let you know that she said this. Or I'd get other emails of like, hey, maybe do just like a quick mental health check-in. It seemed like she was a little down today. And like that's virtual. That's not even, they're not even seeing my 7-year-old in person. They're picking this up from her online. That's not a level 3 school. And so if you go to a school that is, or you are considering moving into an area with low rated schools, I 100% suggest that you dig a little deeper. I do not trust the private websites farther than I can throw them, which is not very far. I do trust more the pure data from the State Department of Education. So we're located in Virginia. So the VDOE has report cards for every single school in the Commonwealth, which is amazing. And every single state has this available for every single public school in their state or Commonwealth. So you can go on and it's just pure data. So in Virginia, you can look and you can see like Jefferson Houston Elementary School in Alexandria City. You can check to see the proficiency scores, like the percentage of students at each grade level that scored proficient or higher in a certain subject. So 3rd grade English, how many kids were proficient or higher? You can look at the teacher education levels. You can look at their licensing, like how many people are provisional or initial license versus professional or like the higher level license. What kind of degrees do the different teachers have? What kind of courses are offered? There's infinite resources out there. And so I like that, being able to pick and choose the data I'm looking at and looking specifically at the proficiency rates, the proficiency scores, and then also the teachers, as well as the school climate, things like absenteeism, graduation rate. That's especially important in high school, especially if you think you might have a child that is at maybe higher risk of dropping out or being chronically absent. The things I tend to ignore are things that like socioeconomic status. That just means that a lot of kids are probably getting free or reduced price lunch. That doesn't really have anything to do with the quality of education. I might look to see if they're a Title I school. I've had a really great experience both teaching at and sending my child to Title I schools. They have extra resources like reading specialists and math specialists that can pull students out when they're struggling. I actually also teach as a Title I teacher, so I really believe in this program. I think it's great. It's a real asset to a school. I'm not looking at things like racial profiles or English language learners. I don't care about those demographic data points, that other than to see that there is diversity in the school, both in ethnic background and in language background. That is important because we live in a world where we don't all look the same or speak the same language or believe the same thing. So exposing my child to that very early and often is important to me. So I would look for those markers, and I would kind of ignore the other ones, the private sites.
Sometimes too, and I wonder if this is the right thing for me to do. So I'm going to ask you, when I'm looking at these metrics from the state, and I'm looking at things like test scores and proficiency, sometimes I will compare them to like student demographics and how often students are coming in and out of the school, because sometimes I feel like that can explain some of the gaps I'm seeing in proficiency.
Yes. And so what I really like about the VDOE website, I'm actually pulling up Alexandria City right now. See if we can, and so you can look at the different data points. You can break it down. Usually on a well-designed website, you can break it down by gender, by race, by special education status, by socioeconomic status, by language, whether they're native English speakers or learning English as a second language. There's literally thousands of ways that you can break this data down. None of them are negative. I don't think any of them should be used as negative points. And I feel like that is what a lot of the private rating websites are doing. They're looking at the socioeconomic data They're looking at the diversity scores and saying, well, there's a lot of, not to be blunt, but there's a lot of poor kids at this school. Maybe the education isn't as good. And so we're taking away points for that. Instead of saying, wow, there's a lot of diversity at this school. This school is rising to meet a lot of different challenges in a diverse setting. That's exciting. That's something that we need to celebrate.
Those are awesome points. And I want to encourage everybody to go to their state's websites and like look at all of these data points, because it's incredible like how much data states take from their schools so that you can make informed decisions about where to send your kids, or even just how to vote when it's time to vote on where your tax dollars are going, or things that are happening in the school district. Everybody needs to be informed about their school districts.
100%. That's such an important thing, especially with school committees. They can do so much damage or so much good. And it's really about voting for someone that is aligning with your personal family's values and where your children are going to school. I just think it's so important. Those people hire the superintendent, who hires the principals, who hire the teachers. So it's important to vote with your values.
Yeah, for sure.
Informed values.
Informed,
so much data.
So much data. Why? When you're in school, or when your kids are in school and taking statistics and you say, I don't know when I'm ever going to use this stuff. Right now is when you use it.
Right now.
And so when I'm looking at this stuff, and maybe I've narrowed it down to a few different places, like maybe there's a charter school and a private school and then the neighborhood school that I'm kind of choosing between, and I'm trying to narrow it down. Are there any people within those schools that I should be talking to, or outside of those schools that I should be talking to when I'm trying to make my decision?
So the first step for me is always to do a social media and online audit. So I look at all of their homepages, all their websites, and say, okay, is this easy to navigate? Can I quickly find the enrollment information? Can I figure out very easily how to buy my kids lunch, how to load up their lunch card? Can I find the contact information for the principal, the teachers, special education? If I'm looking at private schools and charter schools, I'm also looking in terms of equity and diversity. What kind of programs do they have to include people who are maybe outside of their current target demographic? Do they have scholarships? Do they have a student support specialist? Do they have a learning specialist? Do they have the special education options? Do they have remedial options? Do they have acceleration options? What kind of options are we looking at out in the non-public? Granted, charters are technically public, but they operate in that gray zone between public and private with slightly different rules based on what state you're in. But looking at all of those, trying to make sure it's easy, it's friendly, it's approachable, everything is just right there at my fingertips. I have seen some very poorly designed websites where you have to dig for like 10, 15 minutes just to figure out the principal's name or the address of the school. Like that's kind of important to know. So maybe redesign time, but a lot of websites are really very fresh and very parent friendly. Like I just conducted an audit for a client, and I was able to, within 30 seconds of being on each website, find like lunch, enrollment, principal, extracurriculars, like 30 seconds, bing, bang, boom, done. You should also be looking at their social media. What are they posting on social media? Are they being respectful of student privacy and not sharing academic information without parental consent? So I'm talking about like test scores in photos of the school. Are you seeing data walls, publicly displayed data walls? I don't love those. That's a whole other thing.
Can you explain, just for people who don't understand, like what is a data wall?
So a data wall would be basically a bulletin board, and on the bulletin board you are tracking each individual student's standardized test scores or success. This shares private personal educational information, and that's not okay. I don't love it. It is wonderful to celebrate student success, but I think that we shouldn't call students out if they're maybe not meeting the standards of learning. That's a private conversation. That's a conversation to have with that child and with that family individually.
Yeah, I agree. So if we see, so looking at the social media, um, is there anybody within the school or like other parents that we should reach out to?
Yeah, you should reach out to the PTA board members. If there is a PTA, that's good news. It involves parent community. You should look to see if they have social media. So I'm thinking in my daughter's school, there's a very prominent social media account for the PTA at her school. There's also a live email, like a email listserv that goes out with announcements. You want to contact the president of that and just say, hey, we're moving to the area. I'm trying to make sure this is a good fit for my kid. Like, could I borrow like 5-10 minutes of your time? Just have like a quick, can I send you some questions via email? Can we chat on the phone? Like, I just need to make sure you're another parent. I just need to know. You should also be reaching out to the principal and any special or outside like the general education realm teacher. So we're talking special education director, gifted and talented director or coordinator, any coaches of sports programs or extracurriculars, drama, band, etc. Any faculty member or coach who's leading that program, you should be reaching out to those people and saying, hey, my kid's coming here. Tell me about it. What can I do? How can I get involved? An involved parent is always going to be a parent that gets more out of a school. I know that you probably did this as well. Parents that would come to me and have regular positive communication with me, obviously not always positive. There's bound to be problems. It's children and education and parents who want the best for their babies. There's always going to be a problem. But that problem was so much smaller and more manageable if they were already involved, if they were sending me emails and saying, hey, we noticed, and sharing information about their child, or, coming in and volunteering, or offering to cut up laminated stuff at home. There's a relationship there. So if you are willing to step out and say, hey, how can I help? How can I be involved? That teacher is much more willing to listen to your suggestions, your concerns, your questions, and yes, your complaints.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes I heard this from a teacher recently, is sending positive emails and then at the end of the email saying, this doesn't require your response because I know you're busy. For the things that really don't require a response.
Yeah.
Or even just saying like, here are the things I'm good at. Is that any of that? Could that be helpful to you?
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree. Okay, so we've talked to all the people, we've done all the research, we've picked the school, it's coming up on the first day of school. What should we be doing before we get to that new school?
So I'm going to back it up a few months to right about now.
Okay.
So you're moving. You need to let your current school know that you are in fact moving. And always, has always heard me preach this and teach this for years. Everything needs to be in writing. If it's not in writing, it never happened. And so you need to send an email because that is time and date stamped. You need to send it to the principal, the enrollment person, the registrar, the head office assistant, your child's teacher or teachers. You need to send it to all the people that your child is involved with or that handle your child's life at school, all of them. The nurse, if they have a medical problem, like if they have medication at school, and definitely special education or gifted education if those apply to you. Let them know, hey, we're moving. We're anticipating to withdraw our child on blah, blah, blah date. Do I need to fill out any additional paperwork? While I'm here, could I also get a physical or digital copy of my child's complete educational records? Now it's 2021, and so most things are online. So we're talking, and really, unless there's like some deep, dark hole that you want to dive down that the other school really needs to know about, you really just need the last year or two academically. So we're talking report cards, test scores, transcripts, attendance records, behavior logs, things like that. Those are all going to be digital. We live in a very digital friendly world. And so those are all available. So if a parent emails me and say, hey, can I see my child's latest standardized test score? Yeah, sure. Let me just attach that to this email for you. And that's it. And it doesn't cost anyone anything. So now if you want physical copies, many schools do charge for those. And that is within their right per FERPA, which is the Family Education Rights Privacy Act. Ask me how many times I've said that this year. It's like HIPAA, but for schools and your child's school information. So just like your doctor can't tell anyone your medical status or disclose any medical diagnosis to anyone, the school cannot disclose certain things about your child, like their grades, or if they have an IEP, or their standardized test scores. They can't share those things publicly outside of like the stakeholders, and the stakeholders would be like your kid's teacher. So you have access to that, and you have the right to access it whenever you want to. You don't have the right to physical copies. Schools can charge for physical copies. Some schools, I saw a school in, I want to say Chesapeake, Virginia, that wanted to charge a family to the tune of like $5,000, $6,000 for their child's educational records.
What?
Most of the time, it's under $100. So if you can afford that, great. If you don't, if you want to try and save yourself a little money, ask for the digital records.
Awesome. That's a good thing to think about right this minute.
Yeah. So in do case, that right now.
Yeah. In case, it takes a while or you need to talk to a few different people. That's a really great tip. And so do you just suggest having that information like in a folder on your computer, ready to go in case you need it? Okay.
So now you have the information, you got the digital and or printed records, whatever. Though if they're physical copies, you're going to hand carry those to your next location. That's going to go in your carry-on, not your suitcase, your carry-on, because it's personal, private information, and it's what you need to enroll your child in the next school. You're also going to want to look at the enrollment requirements for the next location you're going to. Do they require a physical? And where does that physical need to be completed? So some states are very picky about this. They require a state licensed doctor. So for example, a Maryland licensed doctor to perform the physical exam. Other states don't really care. They just need it to be on their paperwork. So you could print out the paperwork from your next school district and just have your current doctor fill it out. Everything's easy. But if you need the doctor in the new state to fill it out, you're going to want to figure that out. You can even use urgent cares. Urgent cares can complete the paperwork for you because it's really just like weights and measurements and checking your vaccination records. And that's not very challenging, I don't think. I'm not a doctor, so I don't know.
You're
Correct
not,
me on that, please.
I didn't know.
I'm not. Weird. So do that. Get your physical done, scheduled. Then when you get to the new school, you're going to take those physical copies or email the digital copies to the registrar. And you're going to say, hey, I get that these are not official. You're going to get the official stuff, but I need to give you these now so that my child can be placed correctly in school. This is extra important for kids with education plans, gifted education plans, IEPs, 504 plans. They need to have those accommodation support services and correct learning environment in place day one. So you need to get that to the registrar ASAP so they can slot them into the correct place. That's super important. And now we're back to the first day of school.
Awesome.
So that's a lot. And actually, Zoe has the link for it, but I have a book called Stress Free PCS, and it walks you through this whole process with printable organizers and how to build your PCS binder so that you have a timeline and a way to concretely organize everything. It's an ebook, so you can take it on your Kindle with you.
That's awesome. And I'm going to put it in the comments. And also I just want to mention, even if you're not PCSing, like you're not a military family, if you're just moving, I would definitely check it out too.
Yeah. It's good for any family. And I think it's even valuable if you're moving between middle school, like between grade level schools. So elementary to middle to high, having just one place where you can kind of organize your thoughts and your materials and just a checklist of things to do before you get to the next step. It's really important. I mean, I used it when we moved back from Japan. My daughter was just going into kindergarten. I used the checklist to help organize her transition. She didn't have any educational records, but like I just needed some sanity of saying, okay, yeah, I've called the registrar. Yep, we got the physical. Yep, we got this. Okay, all set. We're good to go. It's nice. I'm very type A.
That's fantastic. And I am also very type A, and I think that's why me and you are friends.
Yeah.
And I like just something there to help lessen that mental load. usually it's us moms that are handling all of
Mm-hmm.
this. And so having a place that it's written down that you can look at instead of having to hold all of that in your brain, oh man, such a relief.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's invaluable, I think. And especially if, you're doing this for multiple kids maybe
Yeah.
in different levels of schooling.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's a lot.
And you can print it all out too, which is nice.
It's
So it's
awesome.
it's multiple format for your support.
That's awesome. You are the best. You think of all the things. Um, so Meg, um, you also have some other cool books.
I do.
And so why don't
Yeah.
you tell us about a couple of your other books that people can buy if they're thinking about education this summer and they have some time to read?
Yeah, absolutely. So a few years ago, I made a book. I wrote a book called Talk to the Teacher, and it's basically a recipe book for having a solid conversation with your child's teacher. I know a lot of times when it happens to me as a parent, but you go into the meeting with your child's teacher and you're all of a sudden tongue tied and you just don't know what to say. You had a bajillion thoughts in advance, and now you're just kind of like, great, that looks amazing. I Okay, they did. Okay, great. And it's all like, and it's just a lot. And then you leave the meeting, you're like, but I had a question, but your 10 minutes are up and now you can't ask the question. This book solves that problem for you. There are literally lists of questions that you can ask at parent teacher conferences. There are complete scripts for different conferences, including things that teachers might say in the meeting. So a really good example is a behavior conference. So if your child is in trouble for doing something perhaps against the rules at school, it's a conversation guide of how to get the correct information from the teacher, how to backstop and check that, make sure that information is valid. Gut check questions to ask yourself of, does this seem like my child? And then what do the consequences of those behaviors look like? And I walk you through each and every one of those. There's conversations in there for everything from the most basic of basic parent teacher conferences of your kid is on track doing fine to, oh my gosh, I worry if my kid is going to get expelled tomorrow. There are also emails, like you can literally take my words and just put your child's name and some salient details in there and hit send, like put your name at the bottom also, not mine. But you can take the exact email. So everything from homework to a conference request to special education testing request, there's everything in there, almost that you could possibly imagine.
That's
Yeah,
incredible.
and it's a
And
recipe book.
it's a recipe book. And how better to take some of that load off again of
Yes.
thinking about what exactly you're going to ask, what exactly you're going to say. Just put some of those copy and pastes in your canned emails. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that sounds
Yep.
amazing.
It's super
Um,
easy.
so I'm going to link all of this stuff in the comments so you can get your hands on it. And Meg is going to come back. I just know it because we have a lot to talk um, about school. But thank you so much, Meg, for helping us out when we're picking the school for our kids. I'm also going to link where people can find you online because everybody needs to be following Meg because she puts out awesome stuff for parents. And I'm sure we will talk again soon.
Anytime, literally anytime. Just let me know.